Uh, Welcome, everybody. So, my name is Meenakshi, and we are from InspireAbilities. And we have two wonderful speakers today, Gauri and Amruta. So, Gauri is a registered dietitian trained with trained Vaidya Ayurveda practitioner, certified diabetes care and education specialist, Panchakarma specialist with 21 plus years of experience in integrative health. She is founder of and CEO of Ayurveda Nutrition, an integrative and holistic wellness practice. And she has co-authored books, and she has a YouTube channel, and she does podcast, and she specializes in autism, diabetes, digestive health, weight management, metabolic disorders, and women health. And then we have Amruta. She's pediatric speech language pathologist with nearly 21 years of experience providing speech, language, and feeding therapy to children of all ages. Her therapy approach combines elements of mindfulness and Montessori, allowing her to enter into every child's world and support them as they explore, play, and build connections with those around them. She strives to empower parents and care providers to be in the driver's seat of their child's therapy journey. So we have these two people. One quick disclaimer that this session is for education purpose only. So if you have any specific need or for actually all your specific needs, please see your certified practitioners. This session will be recorded and it will be posted on our website. Nimisha, can you put our website on the this thing on chat in case people have not seen it earlier?
Yes.
Um, yes.
I'll do
Okay.
that now.
Okay. So it's gonna be kind of panel. I have few questions for Amrita and some for Gauri. And if you have any questions that you think is not answered in the this panel discussion, please put it in the chat, and all those questions will be taken in the end. And please be mindful that this will be posted on our website, so please do not ask any very personal question. Any generic question is welcome. Okay. So with that, we can get started. So maybe, Amrita, I can start with you first. That what kind of eating and feeding challenges were children with autism present?
Sure, thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I'm excited because all of you guys decided to spend Sunday morning with us. This topic is such it's close to our hearts, right? And that shows in the number of people who are here. Yeah, but our children with autism may present a variety of feeding and eating challenges. Some of them could be medically based, like they may have difficulty with, they may have gastrointestinal disorders, or they may have birth, disorders that are related to maybe birth defects or something, challenges that happened during gestation. It could be medically related, or maybe their labs are, off, and that's why they're having feeding challenges. It could be very well sensory based. A lot of our children with autism tend to have sensory processing, either disorders or challenges. And eating is such a sensory act, right? From the smells of the food, the way it looks, the way it feels in our mouth, the feeding skill. And then it could also be a skill deficit, which means our children with autism may have problems with the motor planning that is required to actually chew the food, manage the food in their mouth. And then a lot of our children with autism have some amount of anxiety because of just challenges that they're facing. And the dynamic between food and environment, they're handling a lot of pressure sometimes, either maybe not at home, but at school. And there's always that pressure to fit in somehow. So anxiety related disorders can also come up. And so I will probably end this answer by saying that the feeding challenges that are present in the general population, all of those challenges may present in our autistic children. but maybe with a little more severity because of just how their brain is functioning because of autism.
Okay, thank you. So next question, Gauri, maybe we'll start with nutrition. So one thing, if you could tell us that, let me see here, that what healthy food choices, because again, with the picky eaters and all that, the behavior also comes in picture. So can you talk about the behavior and the food? How can we, how can it help with the behavior, and how can we introduce the foods keeping the nutrition in mind?
Wonderful question. So, thing we have to keep in mind, especially for our kids and our population of kids, a lot of times our kids have a lot of GI issues as well. A lot of times, they may have sensory issues, with textures, smells, as well as a lot of time restrictions as well. So, a few things we want to make sure that we have a more balanced approach. Now, what I mean by that is as much as we can focus on more fresh foods, freshly prepared foods, keeping away from a lot of processed foods, a lot of junk foods. The more we can focus on more whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and especially what's in the season. And why is this important is because that we can actually focus on the gut microbiome. There's a lot of research right now that show the direct connection between our gut health and as well as when it comes to immunity, when it comes to a lot of different actually vitamins actually are produced in the gut as well. So the focus definitely needs to be on fresh fruits, freshly prepared food, what's in the season. Now we have heard about, the probiotics, if you've heard about, the strain that's in yogurt and buttermilk and things. But have you heard about something called as prebiotics? So prebiotics basically is a food for the gut microbiome to keep it in balance. And what are the food that contain this prebiotic fiber is, bananas, onions, garlic, a lot of our lentils, beans will come under this. So it's important that we feed our gut microbiome with these prebiotic foods again to keep them balanced. So if I have to say that when it comes to the behavior and things, well, again, remember that a lot of times can be related to the gut and to making sure that we focus on food that are more available in the season to keep that gut microbiome more in balance.
Okay, thank you. So, what kind of, because nutrition and Ayurveda are kind of connected. So, how you think what can help us to improve our overall energy, mood, and well-being for the kids? And then, yeah, energy is big issue. Some kids are very hyper, while some kids are very lethargic. So, what do you suggest we can do?
Okay, so I'm also going to talk a little to the point of view with Ayurveda, my background with Ayurveda
Right.
as well. So in Ayurveda, one of the things we always focus on, what we say in Ayurveda is we're not what we digest. Ayurveda actually goes beyond and says we are what we digest, not just what we eat, what we digest. So the concept is the concept of Agni, which is the digestive fire. So whenever our digestion is strong, the digestive fire is strong, we're able to digest things pretty well. If that digestion is affected a lot of times, when that Agni becomes lower, slower, a lot of times we're not able to digest things well. So when that gets affected, we are not able to absorb nutrients correctly. That means we are not able to maintain things. We are not able to produce what the body needs to maintain our overall health. So things that I will definitely say with regards to Ayurveda also as well is making sure, again, as I said, is making sure that our foods come first, that we make sure that we focus on our Agni, making sure that the kids are getting more nutritious foods, more freshly prepared foods. In fact, one other thing that I always suggest a lot of times is making sure that you add a little of ghee, which is considered really very important in Ayurveda. Even through the modern perspective, two important things that ghee has. One is called the butyric acid, which actually helps with the lining and keeping the stomach lining, which is our mucous membrane, more intact. And the second thing it has is called a CLA, which is a conjugated linoleic acid, which is anti-inflammatory. So important that, as I said, that recognizing that again, giving the foods according to seasons, smaller quantities, again, to start with, making sure that we are aware of, again, our digestion. We are aware, we are listening to the cues of the body as well. And again, making sure that, again, including those food that are there in the season. This is something that in Ayurveda also we put a lot of importance on.
Okay. One question. So cooking with ghee or putting ghee on top of cooked food?
So depending again, like different kids, a lot of times, depending upon, for example, now you can cook with smaller quantities of ghee again, or you can have it, for example, let's say you made dal, right? You can add just maybe a teaspoon or something in the dal when serving as well. So that is completely fine. The only thing is, again, every person's body physiology is different. So again, the amount of quantity of ghee and things you just be mindful of how much you want to have.
Okay. Thank you. Amrita, next question for you, that how do we know that if it's a kid is picky eater or there's some other issue going on? How do we distinguish issues?
So many children who are typically developing children will go through a phase of picky eating when they're younger. If the child was eating certain foods before and now they've discovered that they can have agency over their food and their choices, and they're actually able to say no, or their vocabulary is increasing. They're able to. That is one way to express themselves, and it's not a consistent. One day they might eat, another day they might not. That might be more of a picky eating. But when there is anxiety related to it, and I'm not saying anxiety in the child, but if the parents are starting to get anxious because they feel that their child is not eating enough, or their child is, which is, as in parents, we always feel, many moms especially always feel, my child is not eating enough. But if this is enough for the parent to want to consult their pediatrician, or if meal times become not a battle, but like you're starting to think, oh my goodness, in an hour it's going to be a meal time, and as a parent you're starting to feel anxious, it could be something more. So I always, having worked with so many families, if the parent is starting to feel more anxiety over the meal times, or my child is only eating less foods, has a very restrictive diet, or is only preferring certain types of food and skipping a whole food group, say for example, like not eating enough proteins, or they're very heavily just drinking milk, and not, they're filling up their tummy with milk and not eating, or they're not chewing enough. And this is possibly causing digestion issues, either constipation or runny stools. That is more of an indication of a pediatric feeding disorder, not just picky eating. So it's, again, every situation is different, and it may start off very often as picky eating, or what might look like picky eating. But if they're not, again, if there's a chewing issue, or if there's leaking from mouth while they're eating, or if they keep coughing every now and then, or consistently when they're eating, or they're vomiting when they're eating, before eating, after eating, during eating, they're just skipping certain food groups. Those are more indicators of, no, this is not just picky eating, this is something more. But the golden rule is, if the parent is anxious enough to want to go to the doctor to see, to consult, that's a strong indication that it's not picky eating anymore.
Okay, so there could be sensory problems for kids. So can you talk a little more about then, what could be the possible sensory issues that can kind of stop kids from eating? And then I've seen
Yes,
some kids who swallow instead of chewing. They just swallow, and that also makes them throw up. So can you talk a little more about it, please?
absolutely. So I would like to touch upon two different things here, related to the sensory. So we all know the 5 senses, right? We all learn that in the school. We have the vision or seeing, we have the smell, the sense of smell, we have the sense of taste, we have the sense of hearing, and then we have the sense of touch, which also means, touch as in how it feels, or texture, rough, smooth, runny, lumpy, hot, cold, warm. But did you know that we also have, and possibly many parents here do know, we also have 3 hidden senses. One is the sense of proprioception, which is like the body sense, where our muscles and joints are actually giving the brain feedback about, well, how is my posture right now? Body awareness. How is my posture? Am I sitting upright or am I slouching? Am I sitting or am I standing? That is the proprioceptive sense. Vestibular sense, which is the sense of balance, which is very closely related to our sense of hearing, because it's the inner ears, which directly communicate with the brain about the sense of balance. Am I standing? Do I feel balanced, or do I feel like I'm going to fall? Which is why a lot of times posture is very, very important when it comes to feeding. Or good seating is always important when it comes to eating. And then the last hidden sense is the sense of interoception. And a lot of children with autism, in fact, more and more research is showing that this is the one sense that our children with autism just, have really severe challenges in. That feeling of hunger, the feeling of thirst, the feeling of I don't feel good, the feeling of I need to go to the bathroom, the feeling of, oh, I feel good, or the sense of the feeling when you feel tired or very energized. That is the sense of interoception. And our internal body organs are communicating internally to make us feel that way. That's the sense of interoception. So now going back to sensory challenges with food. Let's take an example of peeling an orange. Okay, I usually use this as an example because there are so many elements involved. So a bright orange, when you pick it up, you might look at how heavy it feels. Some oranges feel lighter, some are big, some are small. The skin feels rough, right? And then once you start peeling it, sometimes you have to exert an extra force when you start to peel that orange. And that's that sense of proprioception, because sometimes it's just very easy, the peel comes off. Sometimes you have to exert a little bit extra force. And sometimes our children with autism don't recognize that. So that peeling of the orange, and once that peel comes off, immediately you start smelling the orange. So that olfactory sense, the sense of smell is activated. And as your sense of smell is activated, sometimes we can feel saliva in our mouth, because the sense of smell and the sense of taste are so closely related. So as you're peeling the orange, you can also feel the saliva in your mouth. Then when you finally put that orange, a piece of orange in your mouth, then that sense of taste is getting activated. The sense of tactile sense is getting activated, because you can feel the orange in your mouth. As you chew it, again, that proprioception, how much pressure do I need to actually chew this orange? And then the juice starts to come out. So that gives a very different feeling inside the mouth too. So as I'm describing this, you may have noticed that a simple act of peeling and eating an orange involves so many senses. And our children with autism especially may get overwhelmed when there are so many senses involved. There is something called a window of tolerance. And our children with autism have a smaller window of tolerance. A little bit of overwhelm or underwhelm throws them off. For example, it's a Sunday morning, I'm here, I'm well rested. I made sure to have a good night's sleep so I can feel fresh and talk today. So my window of tolerance is big. But imagine if I was at an event yesterday and I slept at 1 o'clock. I haven't had enough sleep. I haven't had breakfast. My window of tolerance is already going to be small, even for a grown-up and who doesn't face sensory challenges. Our children with autism, because of everything that's going on, their window of tolerance is smaller already. And so when a little bit of something is thrown off with food related to sensory, maybe the khichdi that was made today is a little more lumpy than usual. Or the dal looks less yellow than it did yesterday. Or the vegetable today is more crunchy, the curry that is more crunchy than it was the last time I ate. Our children with autism tend to be more sensitive to these changes. And so a little bit of change or difference can completely throw them off because their window of tolerance hasn't increased yet. And that, we can work with professionals to increase that window of tolerance, but that takes time. And so, all the sensory challenges that they face otherwise are also seen in foods sometimes. And that's why they may present with a feeding disorder, because they're not able to, they don't have the tools to manage these sensory differences. And so there are things that, each child is different. Sometimes there is this is the second part I wanted to talk about. When it comes to sensory, some children are under processors, some children are over processors, or one sense could be under processing, another sense could be over processing. So we have children who are very sensitive to hearing because they can hear the siren that is 2 streets down, may be extra sensitive to the crunch in the sabji because that crunch they're feeling so close to their ear in their mouth. On the other hand, we have under processors where they may not realize that the food is so hot and they might just start to try to swallow a hot food because it's, we can see steam coming out, but because they're not processing, they're under processing, that sense is under processing, they don't even realize that it may burn their mouth. And then to answer your second question about, we have some children who just don't even eat, they just swallow. There could be 2 things going on here. One is their chewing is not adequate, and so they just have not developed the adequate chewing skill. And the other thing of that the sensory piece could be that they need to put a lot of food in their mouth to actually feel that food in order to swallow. And once that need of feeling the food is satisfied, they just swallow it. And so again, this is a skill that has to be taught specifically to the child. Work with your therapist to work on this skill of chewing and feeling and actually describing how it feels in the mouth. Because if it's a big piece and they start gagging, they're not choking, but they're gagging, it could trigger that vomit.
Okay.
I know that was a long-winded answer, but I think
certainly very helpful. Very helpful.
So, Amruta, this is Veena here.
Yes.
I had a question, like, how do you actually work with kids who clearly present anxiety, specifically, more pronounced when it comes to food, and the fact that they like only one kind of texture, right? I mean, I am presuming it's a sensory issue. Am I right? Is
very
wanting...
often it might be. It might be.
Okay. So if a child only prefers like the khichdis and the mushy kind of texture, is that a sensory issue? Is that a sensory issue, or could it be like actual chewing issues or something?
It could be either or both. It could be
Okay.
a sensory thing that they have a preference for that.
Uh-huh.
Or it could be like that they're lacking that skill of chewing, they've not really developed it. And that needs to be worked on. Like they have to be taught the chewing skill. And also the other piece of this also is our children, again, going back to sensory, our children with autism, if they feel pain or discomfort, sometimes they feel it extra. They're extra sensitive to it. So imagine if your child, if this is a younger child who has a loose tooth, and they're not able to express that they have a loose tooth, or sometimes they may not even know that they have a loose tooth, but every time they try to chew, it hurts, and they don't know that they cannot tell you that it hurts when they chew. They just know that they don't feel good, and so they're not chewing it. So there's, again, this is an individual, as an individual, you have to really assess the whole thing. Is it a lack of chewing skill? Does my child feel pain? Or is it a sensory thing where they're not tolerating other textures? Or is it the environment? Is it something that they have learned? Are they associating the khichdi with comfort and everything else? Remember, I spoke about that window of tolerance. Everything else becomes overwhelming for them. So it could be so many things.
So how do you actually work with a kid who has anxiety along with these other issues?
Um, there are many, it has to be a team approach always. If we know that the child has anxiety related to food, as a speech and feeding therapist, there are certain techniques that you can use. But this child may also need support from a child psychologist, behavior specialist, play therapist, social worker, or someone else to help with that anxiety piece. And I also believe there has to be some amount of parent coaching where we can, as parents, we learn strategies to help the child not feel anxious during meal times. So there is an approach called SOS, where there's a very systematic way of introducing challenges when it comes to food. So let's say, for example, we know one child. Again, I'm going into a little specific thing here, but this child gets really, really overwhelmed when it comes to broccoli. I'm just giving a very, just an example, for example's sakes. A systematic approach might look like the child tolerates seeing the broccoli in the house. Once they're okay with that, then they might be okay touching the broccoli. So maybe they're helping to clean or wash the broccoli. Then they might be okay to actually manipulate, to break up the florets. Then they might be okay to smell, because when they're closer, broccoli will smell too. They might be okay to smell the broccoli. Then they might be okay to taste the broccoli, but they're not ready to chew it yet. So we may have a situation where the child actually does put the food in their mouth, but they're not ready to chew it yet, and they have to take it out. If it's a lack of chewing, then we have to teach the child to actually chew in, using that grading, and then so on and so forth. So it's you have to work in small increments in a team approach where as a therapist, I'm not just working with the child, I'm working with the family unit, because there's a lot that goes on. And sometimes a child has not seen any other person eat that and enjoy the food. Eating is really a community event, right? It's not just about feeding your body or feeling full. It's about feeding your mind too, and it's about feeding your soul. And when you sit as a family, there's so much more there going on than just the act of feeding. We're talking, we're having a good time. And so our children need to see that. They need to also see that, hey, my mom and dad or sibling, they love broccoli and they're really enjoying it. It might be okay. It might be okay for me to try it. And they might just try it and work through all those steps. So it has to be a multi-pronged approach and a team approach. There is no one way to work with a child who has anxiety. There are many things.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And we'll please keep typing your questions in chat. We'll answer all those questions in the end. So, Gauri, do you have anything to add here, for introducing new foods to picky eaters or sensitive eaters? Anything additional you would like to offer?
You're asking me, right?
Yeah, Gauri. Yeah.
So one of the things I would definitely say that, when it comes to picky eaters, what helps is showing the kids, I would say, reintroducing their foods multiple times. So if, let's say you have, let's say introduce just one particular, let's say a vegetable, okay? Depending upon how the kid has liked, okay? And don't be discouraged the first time the kid doesn't like it. Okay? The more we introduce, the more we show the kid, the more we actually all sit around and have the same food. That means the kid is seeing that that same food is in all our plates as well, and we all are eating the same food. It's more encouraging as well. I would definitely also keep an eye as to the quantity. For example, let's say it's a couple of let's say it's just one floret of broccoli, as Amruta was talking about. Was it just one floret of broccoli? Was it more than that? What was the response? How did the child feel after you introduced the new food? The other thing I would also keep in mind is also half an hour after, let's say, a new food has been introduced, keep an eye on the GI symptoms as well. Again, does the child say, oh, I feel like I have to go to the restroom? Or just, for example, let's say feels like, there's a tummy ache, or the child feels happy. Or, for example, you want to definitely keep an eye on these subtle signs as well to see that, how well the child is accepting that food. And as I said, the more we introduce those foods as well, the more the child is going to be more than encouraged to have that, introduce a food as part of their meals. And there's different ways to introduce. You can make it as part of a meal. It could be a part of a snack as well. Or, for example, one of the best ways I say that, if you want to also encourage the child, is if there's a way for all of you to make it together. For example, you're making a snack, a quick snack, and this is something that's new to the child. So, a quick snack, or maybe just, sliced apples, and maybe you are introducing something like a nut butter or something like hummus or something with that, right? So again, is it something that, all of us can you make that snack together? A lot of times it's more encouraging when as a family, you make things together as well. So again, that's something I always encourage everybody is to really do things together. So that way it's more encouraging for the family, for the kids to also see that the parents are eating the same thing as the child as well.
Okay. So, related question then, Gauri, that do we, again, the nutrition and sleep and behavior, these are all kind of mixed with each other. Majority of our kids have sleep issues. So with meals and sleep, can you tell a daily routine, some simplified routine we can follow that can help us better with nutrition and sleep?
Very excellent question. So nutrition, sleep, stress, all these things are related. I say that they are the part of the different gears in the body. One relates to the other. Any one of these gets affected, the other gets affected as well. Okay? Now I'm going to touch base on the sleep first before I go into the nutrition part. Why is the sleep important? Okay? What happens during sleep? So when we have the 7 to 8 hours of sleep, what happens is our body is rebuilding itself. So all the enzymes we produce, all the hormones we produce are getting rebuilt during the sleep time. In fact, the muscle mass that our body needs to maintain is getting maintained during that sleep time. So whenever this time is either affected, that the quality, the quantity of sleep, it will definitely affect the energy levels in the body next day as well, because the body is not producing things that it needs to maintain itself. Now, how does nutrition also help with that? Making sure that, again, we have early meals. That means our evening meal, 6 to 7, not later than that as well. The more later we eat, literally we're not doing anything, but we are just sitting on it. Our digestion is slower in the evening. So again, we want to keep that in mind, is to make sure that when we have our meals, we're having them on proper time. So scheduling with our meals is very, very important. Okay? To have better digestion, we want to have more scheduled meals. So again, when it comes to, let's say, the bigger meal of the day, what I usually say is, our bigger meal really literally needs to be our lunch between 12 to 1, because at the time when our body produces the best enzyme for digestion as well. So again, making sure that we're having our meals on times to go again with a proper routine as well. Second thing I would say is, and this is I'm going to talk a little with regards to Ayurveda as well, is a really wonderful routine that Ayurveda talks about is the concept of Abhyanga. Abhyanga means self-massage. Okay, so Abhyanga is basically an oil massage. Okay? And again, something as simple as we can do is, oiling or massaging our hands and feet, because these are considered what we call the organs of what do you call it? Energy. So again, whenever we are massaging our hands and feet, again, it helps one to calm ourselves. It helps to calm even the kids as well. And why Abhyanga is really important is just below our skin, we have the lymphatic system, and which is superficial. So whenever we are doing a very simple, gentle touch, a gentle massage, what it does, it increases that lymph flow in the body. And when it increases the lymph flow in the body, it actually helps with the overall detox. Again, helps with the stress management as well. So again, a simple routine, if you can do like an Abhyanga on a daily basis. If not, then maybe even on the weekend, even, something as simple as, oiling or massaging the hands and feet helps a lot with the sleep as well, especially with the kids as well. So that's something I would definitely say, that making sure that sleeping on time, having meals on time, having freshly cooked meals, okay? Making sure that we are including, I mean, if you're doing a snack, now this is something also, the time between a meal and a snack typically should be at least 2 hours. So let's say the lunch is around 12 to 1, maybe a snack around 3 to 4, and the dinner between 6 to 7. Okay. So again, following our meals on time, having a schedule with them, having a sleep on time, Abhyanga is a great option. The other thing also is any kind of physical activity also helps. The better circulation we have in the body, the better oxygen, the better nutrients to our cells. So our food, our activity, our stress management, again, that can be part of our activity as well. And then our sleep on time, making sure that both us as well as the kids are getting the 7 to 8 hours of sleep that they need as well.
Okay. Which oil can we use for this massage for lymphatic drainage?
So oils, anything that let's say the kids are not, they don't have any allergy.
Okay.
Coconut oil is considered more cooling in nature. Sesame seed oil is considered more warming in nature. In fact, people can also use something like olive oil as well. Or can do a combination of coconut oil, olive oil, or combination of coconut oil or sesame seed oil as well. Again, now keep in mind, a lot of times our kids are sensitive to the smell. So that is something also you may want to keep in mind, is again, maybe a combination or just starting with just a few drops in the palm of your oil, again, making it a little warm as well. So that is something I'll keep in mind, is having an oil again, which is something you think that the kid will be able to use or will be able to accept as well.
Okay. And we should do it at night time? What time? Does-
If you're restricting the hands and feet, then that helps a lot with the sleep as well. Okay.
Okay.
But even at least once a week, if you can do it, you'll see that there's a better sleep increases the quality of sleep. Second thing is appetite, I've seen also helps a lot, helps to calm the kid as well.
Okay. So then can you Indian cooking has a lot of spices and herbs we use. So can you tell us some specific herbs and spices that we can use for focus, calmness, and digestion?
So, in our typical Indian cooking, we at any given time, a lot of times we're using at least 4 or 5 different spices. Okay. So turmeric, ginger, garlic. Again, these especially ginger, garlic are considered really great for digestion. In fact, in Ayurveda, we have a term for ginger. It's called Vishwabheshaj. Vishwabheshaj, that means the world healer. So again, whenever there's any digestion issues, again, making sure we're getting enough, especially the ginger in, helps a lot with the digestion. Turmeric is great, especially things like, fennel, cumin. these are also considered what I call the cooling spices as well. One of the things we talk about in Ayurveda is, the concept of having different foods in different seasons. So in summer, when the things are more hot around, you want to have more cooling spices, more maybe fennel or more cumin and things in the food. In winter, when it's a little more colder, you want to have more warming spices. So things like, for example, again, black pepper, or for example, cinnamon, and things like, for example, cloves and things. So again, you may also change the type of spices based on the seasons. You can also change it based on, again, how much, for example, sometimes our kids are going to be sensitive again to the different types of spices, the taste, textures. So again, when you're introducing spices, again, making sure that it's more subtle, and as they accept it more, then slowly you can look at different changes or different spices to be introduced as well.
So, Amrita, a question for you. That a lot of our kids who just survive on fries or chicken nuggets, or fixed color of the food, they won't even try a different color. So, what can we do for these kids who just want to eat one food all the time and would just throw tantrum if we want to make them eat anything else? So, if you could help us with that.
Absolutely. So let me preface my answer by actually answering, why do our kids even prefer these foods? Why beige, or why that sameness? We talked about the sensory things, right? Foods can be visually visually overwhelming, smells, taste, so when it comes to color, our children with autism may get easily overwhelmed by colorful foods, foods with different textures, smells, tastes, and looks. Beige speaks, it's the same. When it's beige, or chicken nuggets, or fries, or chips, or cookies, or crackers, goldfish, all of these, they're same. They can expect the same always. So, for example, we even have children who only will like chicken nuggets from McDonald's, or chicken nuggets only from Chick-fil-A and nowhere else, because our children are very, very sensitive to the slight changes in the flavor, smell, texture. So when our children choose to eat the same foods, again, we're talking about that window of tolerance. They prefer the sameness because then their sensory system does not get overwhelmed, because their window of tolerance is smaller, not broader yet. Or if they're having, it almost becomes like a comfort food, because if they have too much going on in their outside world, maybe a new teacher or a new friend or a new school, or they're not feeling good, changes in the family system, holidays coming up. If there are changes in their outside world, this is a way for them to exert control on their inside world. So that is the reason our children prefer sameness, because they can expect the same thing over and over and over. They're not spending extra energy to think about, when it's colorful food or when it's different food each meal, they don't know what to expect. So they're expending extra energy to process the differentness. Some children even get hung up on, oh my goodness, this looks different. How is it going to taste? And that could be anxiety producing for them sometimes. So this is one reason why our children sometimes prefer sameness. So one way to tackle this is to not introduce something new, not introduce a new food when there are many changes happening in their environment. Choosing the right time and place to introduce new foods. Choose a weekend or a holiday, or a time when you know that your child is absolutely calm, confident, there are no other changes going on in their routines. And introduce slowly. Like Gauri was saying earlier, maybe not in their meals yet, only in a snack. Cooking together, using, making something as a family, even going grocery shopping, or now that we are in the spring, we are in spring, maybe going to a farmer's market, even that, not they're not exposed to eating that food yet, but maybe start with looking at the food yet first, exposing through the visual, seeing, smelling, touching first, before the expectation is for them to eat. Also, when you actually do prepare something new, you have control over what you provide for them. Let your child have control over how much they take. So if, let's say, there is a bowl of, I'm going to go with broccoli because we talked about broccoli earlier. Let's say you're trying a new broccoli dish and you're serving it in a bowl. Maybe having a bigger spoon, serving spoon, but also having a smaller serving spoon. So you may take a big spoonful in your plate, but your child has the option of using the small spoon to take a little bit on their plate. So letting them having control over how much they're taking, because you've decided what is going to be. So parent decides what to give, what to provide, child gets to decide how much to take. So that could be one strategy, but starting in small increments, looking, touching, feeling first, and expectation of eating should come later.
Okay. So Gauri, for you, can you suggest some snacks, some meals that are easiest, doesn't take, long prep time, something we can come faster, and other, two things. So that is suggest us some simple meals and snacks, but with good nutrition. Another thing is that if you could tell that how the parents can introduce the, simple nutrition steps, what we can do for our kids to ensure the kid is getting enough nutrition. You are mute.
Thank you. So, good questions. So, simple ways, simple examples of snacks I'm going to tell you. One of the things, keep in mind a lot of times, because our kids sometimes may have, as I said, texture issues and things, we always want to make sure that they are getting enough of the carb protein combinations together. Okay. Carbs basically, why? Because the primary source of energy for the body is glucose. So our brain cells, nerve cells, red blood cells rely entirely on glucose for functioning. Protein, again, as I said, enzymes, hormones, muscle mass maintenance, we need all that for coming in from the protein. So usually I'll say, you always want to make sure that each meal, each snack, it's more of a carb protein combination. An easier thing for snacks, I would say that, something like fruit, and let's say if your child is able doesn't have any nut allergies, then maybe fruit and nuts is a good example, or a fruit and nut butter, or something like fruit and hummus, if you like. It's a good example for a carb and protein together as well. For those who like to have, for example, use yogurt and things, or use any dairy in their food, even things like simple things like yogurt parfait. So you could do like a small yogurt, let's say blueberries, whole grain granola and things as well. Again, simple of that as well. Something can be a simple thing, can also be, let's say, it can be a whole grain chapati, or again, for those who use gluten free, you can use a gluten free option when it comes to chapati or the tortillas. Again, you could do low fat cheese in there, or some nut butter. So again, we are doing a carb and a protein combination. Something for meals, something as simple as it can have, again, depending upon whether your preference is, you take animal protein versus plant-based protein. An animal protein can be chicken, fish, as well. If it's your plant-based, your dals, lentils, beans, they're going to, or low-fat paneer is going to be your examples for the proteins coming in. Combining that with the carbs. So again, whole grains. Again, It can be brown rice, or it can be, for example, if you like millets, you could use that. You could do quinoa as well. Something, easiest thing, I say something which is a really good example of a one-pot meal is khichdi. Okay, you have lentils, you have the dal, you can do brown rice, you can do regular rice, you can do quinoa, you can do millets, and again you can add any vegetables that are there in the season. So it becomes a one-pot meal. Again, you have your carb protein combination. You're getting the fiber coming in from the vegetables. So again, it's just easier to have that as well. Just making sure that at each meal you are focusing on that protein carb combination at meals and at snacks as well. But a lot of times you will see with our kids, especially, they don't eat a lot at one time. So again, making sure that if you're doing snacks, that you every 3 to 4 hours, you have spaced that out for the kids as well.
Okay,
And
thank
simple
you.
strategies, to ways to introduce those different foods is, again, having a schedule. What I will say is that, as a family, you can sit down together on a weekend and look at, what can you chart up, for example, examples for meals for the whole week as well. What you want to have for breakfast, for lunch and dinner, and make sure that all of you are eating almost the same thing. So that way it encourages the child as well to that when they see the parents are eating the similar things. And again, when you're introducing new foods, and I liked Amruta's example that you introduce it on a weekend or maybe on it's a holiday where things are not overwhelming. And you're slowly introducing those new foods as well. And again, keep a log as to, for example, one thing that I always will help is to keep a log as how much your child has been eating, maybe for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And secondly, keep an eye on the weight as well, weekly, if you're doing a weekly weight, just to make sure there's not a weight loss as well. Okay? So these are simple things, is that, slowly introducing those foods, making sure that you're keeping an eye on, again, the quantities. And third thing is that the weight is once a week. I would definitely make sure that looking at the weight, that there's not frequent changes in the weight as well.
Okay, so weight is another issue with our kids because a lot of us are on anti-seizure meds, anti-anxiety meds, and all these meds means weight gain, a lot of weight gain. And then sleep disruption also adds to that. So anything you can suggest to keep weight under, certain limit, that how do we watch the weight that doesn't balloon?
So one, as I said, that make sure that the meals are focusing. It's a balanced meal approach. You have the carbs, you have the proteins. We also have our vegetables in, your fiber coming in. But at the same time, make sure that, again, activity is a part of the daily routine as well. Because it functions as a stress management technique, but also helps with the metabolism and keeping the metabolic rate active as well, and the sleep part. So we have to function. We have to just not look at food. Food is definitely number one, but besides that, activity level and the sleep will also be an important part to make sure that's part of the daily routine as well.
Okay,
If I may
Krishna?
plug in here also.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So, sometimes, and this might answer one of the questions that I saw in the chat also. So sometimes food can be like Gauri said, for stress management. It could be a stress buster. So our children may start using food to help them calm down. So that could lead to weight gain also. Of course, all the medications can lead to that also, but it becomes like a stress busting thing, like, a stress eating can happen, which can cause weight gain. So on the same lines of activity, like increasing that activity and, that again, activity and sleep and all those, it helps to produce serotonin and all those happy hormones. But also maybe adding a proprioceptive input every now and then as part of, you may have heard the term sensory diet, or a sensory schedule. Using something like proprioceptive input, what does that mean? It means some kind of helping our body exert some energy or maximum effort, it's called in some circles, like lifting a heavy laundry basket, maybe doing a push-up, maybe having a bar, one of those exercise bars, and doing a pull-up. especially for our older children, those things can be part of a routine, like, every 2 hours, maybe adding something like that, or adding something in their routine that will give them that proprioceptive input, especially right before their meal, so that they're meeting their body's need for that effort already. And then they might eat maybe a smaller portion because their body has already met that need. This works really well for our children who are on medications, anxiety medications, ADHD medications, or if you see that their diet has suddenly changed or their food intake has suddenly increased because of the medication, which can happen a lot. Adding this proprioceptive input right before a meal may help to combat that. And for children who may have a loss of appetite, that weekly weight, yes. But also, and maybe Gauri can add input in this, but maybe looking at food choices that will increase calories at every meal if you're worried about weight loss.
Okay.
Good.
And is it okay? Would you have little extra minutes because we are kind of out of time? Can you spend some more minutes to answer the questions? Gauri, you too?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Okay, so let's talk about Pika, eating the non-food items. How can we address this? The kids,
I can go,
they mouth
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
toy
I can go
and all.
first.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Again, looking at, and this is very common in our children with autism, there could be a couple of most common things. One is sensory. Are they seeking some kind of sensory input? Second is attention. Are they seeking attention? Because when they do that, what is the first thing that most parents do? Stop that. Don't do it. And so they're not really listening to what you're saying, but they got your attention. So those are the two most common things to look at. Is it an attention seeking thing or is it a sensory seeking thing? And then also, is it a nutritional deficiency that's causing it? I'll let Gauri answer now. You have more to say.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, with the pica especially, you want to keep in mind, again, pay attention to what exactly, if the frequency they're doing that. Secondly, I would be observant as to what exactly, is that they are putting in their mouth. Is it, for example, is it earth? Is it mud and stuff? Again, sometimes there's some studies which show that that can be related more to, again, could be, iron deficiency and things as well. So again, if you're noticing this more frequently as well, then I would definitely seek out to the pediatrician as well, speak out to the pediatrician regarding these concerns. Secondly, have the pediatrician also look at any tests to look at are there any nutrition deficiencies as well that are causing that as well, and keep an eye on their meals as well, and also the frequency of the bowel movements as well.
Okay. Thank you. Next one is that one mom said her daughter has GERD, constipation. So anything you can suggest to ease that issue?
So again, one thing I will tell you with constipation and GERD, again, a lot of times these are related to each other. I will tell you. A lot of times, this is what I've seen that kids who have constipation, they have more of the reflux and the GERD as well. Again, what helps a lot, again, to keep in mind is making sure that, again, meals, the time between the dinner and the bedtime is at least like 3 hours. We're not having late dinners. That actually can increase that GERD and reflux and things. Again, keep in mind is about the meals as well. Again, making sure that, again, certain foods, for example, spicy foods, a lot of times can trigger GERD and reflux as well. A lot of times, different foods can trigger that as well. So I would look at, again, the food as well. And again, keep an eye on what foods sometimes are, is it triggering to constipation? Again, is there enough fiber in the food as well? Is there enough fluids, enough hydration throughout the day So that is something I would definitely keep in mind. But again, if there's more specific questions, again, the participants can reach out to us directly.
Good. Okay, and then we talked about timed meals that we should have meals by certain time. But one mom said that if she gives early dinner, then the kid asks for a snack. So is there anything we can do for that?
So if they're doing an early dinner, like how I would say that if they're doing early dinner, then I would again keep in mind is that let's say, for example, if it's really early, between instead of 6, it's more like 5 o'clock. Okay. And the bedtime is more around 9. If the kid is saying that I'm really feeling hungry, yes, maybe a small snack, before bedtime, because a lot of times on hungry stomach, a lot of times that can also affect the sleep as well. So if they want to have like a small snack, it's okay to have that one of time.
And also sticking to healthy snacks. If they want a snack, switching from the processed sugary foods, if that's what they're craving, sticking to the basics, like, healthy fruits, healthy vegetables, something that's fresh. Sometimes it could be like maybe a sugar crush, if they're used to eating processed foods. That's a whole another discussion, that there's so much hidden sugar in our processed foods.
Right.
So maybe it's that also that they're craving. So that transitioning from their usual snack to a more healthy and fresh snack might be a little difficult in the beginning, but their body will adjust, but sticking to more healthy snacks.
Okay. And another thing, okay, did I cut somebody? Any question
Yes,
related? Yeah.
one more thing I would definitely keep in mind is that in the foods, make sure that there's enough protein in the food, because that will actually increase the satiety and that sense of fullness for a longer time. So that is very important to keep in mind, that there's enough protein coming in the food as well.
Okay. And how about the kids who are kind of, I won't say addicted, but they are fixated on food. They just talk, eat, live for food only. My kid included, that he needs to know what he would be eating tomorrow. So the fixation on the food, is there any, it's kind of behavior also. So can we do anything to address that?
I
They
like
all,
the idea
yeah,
of,
go ahead,
sorry.
sorry. Yeah, go
No,
ahead.
I like Gauri's idea of meal planning with your kid, especially there could be, again, like you said, it could be behavior. It could be, that's his way of calming down or keeping calm, or that need to know what's happening in the future because there's some amount of anxiety related to that. So if you meal plan with your child, then that way the meal plan is there. If they're fixated on what they're going to eat, your response could be the same every single time. Go look at the meal plan, and there it is, right? And but if it's, that availability of food is, if that's the anxiety producing thing, again, working with, whoever, a professional we might be working with, to address that in a more healthy way. We're not feeding into anxiety, we're feeding, the more you attend to a behavior, the stronger it gets. So finding ways, working with your professional to find ways to attend to the positive wanted behavior and not getting into this loop.
Okay. Okay.
I
And
have a
anything we
I have
can
a
do
question.
for, yeah, go ahead, Rajiji.
I have just one question here. When you were saying that, the child doesn't feel full in his mouth or in her mouth, so he eats more and eats faster. So, how can we handle that? Because then there is a dental problem, then he eats faster, then it comes out like, like a cow or whatever. And then that region, that big word, I always forget that word. And then it comes back to his mouth, and then the back of the teeth are so, damaged. So how do we handle that behavior?
I feel like I can give some input. This is a very, very specific thing that's happening. And to piggyback on what I said earlier, it seems like there might be more than just behavior, but not being too
Mhm.
specific, but if you're working with a professional, finding out if there is actually an underlying feeding disorder where they haven't learned the skill of chewing,
Okay.
and or is there a sensory more of a sensory need? Is it a sensory seeking behavior, which if you have a speech therapist or an occupational therapist you work with, it could be a conversation with them, like, is there something that we're missing here? Or is it that if he's regurgitating, then is there something related to his gut health, and or even sometimes positioning, the way he or she is sitting, posture. There could be so many things here
Okay.
that needs to look at. It may not just be a behavior, it could be something more that needs to be looked at.
Okay.
I just have one thing to add. Amruta, is
Thank
it
you.
related to the oral maxillofacial kind of therapy? We also help.
Oromaxillofacial or
Yeah.
myofunctional, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I think there's a oral maxillofacial
OMT,
therapy.
yes,
Yeah.
oromyofunctional therapy. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It could be
Yeah.
it could be a structure / function thing. It could be, again, I'm not diagnosing here. Just
Yeah.
Yeah.
there could be a tongue tie. There could be a cheek tie, the tightness of muscles, lack of control. If your child has apraxia or motor control, that could be.
So where to go? I mean, who to ask?
Start for an
Start with-
oral problem like that, a feeding therapist, which could be a speech therapist or an occupational therapist.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Did we miss any question? Any other question? I think we covered everything. Okay. So thank you everybody for joining today's call. It was very fruitful, I would say. Got a lot of information. So thank you everybody. Thank you Gauri and Amrita.
Sorry. Meenakshi, I do see a
and
couple of questions.
oh,
I
you
don't know
do?
if you're
Okay.
able to see. I see one from Janki. What foods does Ayurveda recommend for optimal cognitive function?
Oh
I don't know
yeah,
if that was
that was just yeah.
okay.
Yeah, Gauri, can you answer that please?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So what Ayurveda says, as I said, even for optimal cognitive function, is the concept of seasonal foods. Again, have more food that are there available in the season. That means the fruits, the vegetables. Secondly, is making sure that you're having fresh fruits. So the concept of having freshly prepared food is very important. Third is if again the person, even the kid, or let's say is able to have a little ghee into the diet, that also is considered really good. In Ayurveda, one of the things we talk about is ghee is considered Agni. Agni, that means it helps with balancing our Agni, our digestion as well. But also we know that when it comes to the gut, that everything is connected. Is the gut and the brain are connected. So again, wherever we feel that anxiety and things is in the gut. So we want to make sure that we are eating on time. We are eating freshly prepared foods. Again, making sure that we are cognitive of the mindful of the time for our meals, and again including food that are more in the season. So ghee is important if you can. The other thing is something that we also talk a lot about in Ayurveda is buttermilk as well. So again, for those who like to include more of the probiotic of foods in Ayurveda, we say that our probiotic food is basically example is the buttermilk as well. So that is something, again, thinking about having that. And again, what I say when you're having the buttermilk is, again, making it from the freshly prepared yogurt or the curd. So if you have put your yogurt to make it in the morning, by the afternoon, which is called the more of the the sweetness you have, not too much of the sour. Making the buttermilk from that. And again, depending upon if you want to add a little different spices to that, some cumin or little ginger or something, or some coriander, again helps with the digestion as well.
Okay, thank you. I think we are covered now. Nimisha?
Yeah, I think so too. I've
Okay.
just posted the poll if
Yeah,
everybody
if
can.
everybody can provide the feedback. So Gauri and Amrita, they have a workshop coming up. Gauri or Amrita, can you talk about that? Do you want to give that information to the audience here, please?
Yes, so we have a wonderful workshop called as Mix, Stroll, Enjoy. This is going to be on April 19. This is an in-person workshop for kids with autism, a food and sensory workshop where Amruta and myself, we're going to be having this workshop. It starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. We just have a few more seats available. So if you're thinking of coming to this in-person workshop, please make sure that you sign up as soon as possible. Again, excellent workshop again to get introduced the concept of nutrition, and again Amrita will talk a little more about the feeding therapy and things. Amrita, if you want to talk a little more.
Yeah, so this workshop again is not therapy. It's not a diagnostic session or a therapy session. It's basically meant for really the children to have fun, and for us to give a chance to the parents to feel empowered to make healthy snacks with your child, keeping in mind of their their sensory challenges if there are any, or oromotor challenges if there are any, and providing options where we're really working in creating a fun, friendly sensory environment for the child to cook together with their parent and maybe even eat their snack.
And the age limit for the kids is 8 to 14 years. So this is our age limit we're looking at. And we also are requesting one parent to be with the child as well. So again, we have a very few limited seats available now. So if you have not signed up and you think this is a good option for you and your child to attend, please make sure that you sign up as soon as possible.
Someone asked for a link to the workshop. Meenakshi, can we provide that to you?
You can put it here. Yeah, you can put it here. So, and for InspireAbility events and meetup, so we will be holding more webinars and informational sessions like this every month. So please like the Facebook page, and keep checking our website. And Nimisha has put the Facebook page here, so please like that so that you are informed about those. And we have a workshop coming up. We have some other get-togethers coming up. So please keep an eye. And one thing I would say in the last, that at InspireAbility, we are a very small group of moms, and we are trying to bring all these events to you with love and the purpose to get all of us educated. We don't have any sponsors, we don't have any corporate backing. So everything we kind of do as a collective effort from our community. So if you feel, can you please support us through a donation, your time, or any skill you think you can teach our kids, so we can build a workshop around it. So please know that every little help makes a meaningful difference. And together we can achieve so many things. Yeah, please consider that. And thank you very much for being part of our journey. Thank you attending this webinar, giving your Saturday morning here. And we'll meet you at our next webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gauri.